Hello and welcome back to Senior Health Review. I'm Dr. Leonid Kim, and today I want to talk about something that affects almost every one of my patients over 60, and yet almost nobody is talking about it. Most of you watching this are probably already doing the right things. You're taking your calcium, maybe you're drinking milk, eating cheese, watching your diet. And yet you go in for a bone density scan and the numbers aren't where you want them to be. Your doctor tells you you're at risk for osteoporosis. And you think to yourself, what am I doing wrong? Here's what I tell my patients. You're not doing anything wrong, but you may be missing a crucial piece of the puzzle. After the age of 60, your body absorbs up to 50% less calcium than it did when you were younger. 50%. That means even if you're getting plenty of calcium in your diet or from supplements, your body may only be using half of it, or less. So the question isn't just how much calcium are you getting. The real question is, how much of it is your body actually absorbing and putting to use? That's what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to share with you 6 foods you can find at any grocery store, that have been shown to help your body actually absorb and utilize calcium more effectively. These aren't magic cures, and they work best as part of a broader plan you've built with your doctor. But if you're not including these in your diet, you may be leaving some very important bone health benefits on the table. Let's get started. Before we get to the foods, I want to take just a couple of minutes to explain why this happens, because understanding the why makes it so much easier to know what to do about it. There are 3 main reasons calcium absorption declines with age. First, stomach acid decreases. As we get older, many people produce less stomach acid, a condition called hypochlorhydria. Stomach acid is what breaks down calcium compounds from food and supplements so your intestines can actually absorb them. Less acid means less dissolved calcium available for your body to use. This is also why certain calcium supplements, calcium carbonate, work better when taken with food, because meals stimulate acid production. Calcium citrate, on the other hand, doesn't require as much acid, which is why many doctors prefer it for older adults. Second, vitamin D levels drop. Vitamin D isn't just a vitamin, it acts more like a hormone in your body. Your kidneys convert it into its active form, called calcitriol, which is the key that unlocks calcium absorption in your small intestine. Without enough Viking D, calcium can't pass from your gut into your bloodstream efficiently. And after 60, our skin is less efficient at producing vitamin D from sunlight, our kidneys convert it more slowly, and many of us simply spend less time outdoors. Third, gut transit speeds up. The longer food stays in your small intestine, the more time your body has to absorb the nutrients in it, including calcium. As we age, changes in gut motility mean food sometimes moves through more quickly, giving the intestine less time to do its job. The good news is that several everyday foods can directly address these mechanisms by boosting vitamin D, supporting healthy gut bacteria, and creating the right environment for calcium to be absorbed. Those are the 6 foods I want to share with you today. Let's start with one of the most powerful things you can put on your plate: fatty fish. Why it helps. Salmon, sardines, and mackerel are among the very few foods that are naturally rich in vitamin D3, the same form of vitamin D your skin makes from sunlight, and the most effective form for raising your blood levels of this critical nutrient. As I just explained, without adequate vitamin D, the calcium you consume simply cannot be absorbed efficiently in your intestine. Fatty fish directly addresses that gap. 3 ounces of cooked salmon provides somewhere between 70 and 80% of the daily vitamin D most older adults need. That's remarkable for a single food, but there's more to the story. The science. Sardines, in particular, are what I call a double-duty food. When you eat canned sardines with the bones, and those soft, edible bones are completely safe to eat, you're getting both vitamin D and calcium in the same serving. Research consistently shows that populations with higher oily fish consumption have better bone mineral density outcomes, in part because of this vitamin D and calcium combination. A story from my practice. I had a patient, a retired school teacher named Margaret, 68 years old, who came to me concerned about her bone density results. She was taking a calcium supplement faithfully every day. When I looked at her diet, she was getting almost no vitamin D from food. We added salmon twice a week and a small can of sardines once a week. 6 months later, her vitamin D levels had improved meaningfully, and at her next bone density check, her physician noted a stabilization of her numbers. She told me, "Dr. Kim, I actually like sardines now. I never thought I'd say that." How to use it. Aim for 2 to 3 servings of fatty fish per week. A serving is about 3 to 4 ounces, roughly the size of a deck of cards. For salmon, baked or pan-seared with a little olive oil is ideal. For sardines, the canned variety with bones packed in olive oil or water is convenient and affordable. You can add them to salads, eat them on whole grain crackers, or mix them into a light pasta dish. Caution. If you're watching your sodium intake, particularly important for those managing blood pressure, rinse canned sardines or choose low-sodium varieties. And if you're taking blood thinners like warfarin, check with your doctor before significantly increasing your omega-3 intake from fish, as high amounts can enhance the effects of those medications. Food number 2. Eggs, especially the yolk. I know eggs have had a complicated reputation over the years, but for bone health after 60, the egg yolk in particular deserves a serious second look. Why it helps. Egg yolks contain 2 nutrients that are critically important for calcium absorption and use. The first is vitamin D, in both D2 and D3 forms. The second is vitamin K2. Now, K2 is one of those nutrients most people haven't heard of, but it plays a fascinating role in bone health. Think of it this way. Calcium is the building material for your bones. Vitamin D is what gets it into your bloodstream, and vitamin K2 is what tells the calcium where to go. Specifically, K2 activates a protein called osteocalcin, which directs calcium into bone tissue rather than leaving it to accumulate in soft tissue or arteries. The science. Multiple studies in older adults have shown that higher vitamin K2 intake is associated with better bone mineral density and a lower risk of hip fractures. One long-running study in the Netherlands found that women with higher K2 intake had significantly slower decline in bone density over time. Eggs are one of the most accessible dietary sources of K2, especially pasture-raised eggs, which can contain 3 to 4 times more vitamin D than conventional eggs due to the hen's exposure to sunlight. A story from my practice. One of my patients, a 71-year-old gentleman named Harold, had been avoiding egg yolks for years because of old cholesterol concerns. When we reviewed the current evidence together and he started eating 2 whole eggs at breakfast, he noticed he felt more energetic, and over time, his follow-up labs and bone health markers both looked better. He told me it was the best news he'd heard in years, that something he actually enjoyed was good for him. How to use it. 2 whole eggs per day is a reasonable target for most older adults based on current research. Scrambled, poached, hard-boiled, all are fine. If you can find pasture-raised eggs at your grocery store or farmer's market, the vitamin D content is significantly higher. Pair them with a source of vitamin C at the same meal. We'll talk about that shortly, and you're setting up an excellent absorption environment. Caution. If you have a history of cardiovascular disease or your doctor has specifically advised you to limit dietary cholesterol, Have that conversation before increasing your egg intake. Current evidence generally supports 1 to 2 whole eggs per day as safe for most healthy older adults, but your individual situation matters. As always, work with your doctor. Food number 3, magnesium-rich foods, pumpkin seeds, almonds, and dark leafy greens. You may have heard that calcium and vitamin D work together, but there's a third player in this team that doesn't get nearly enough attention: magnesium. Why it helps. Magnesium is essential for converting vitamin D into its active form, calcitriol, in the kidneys. Without sufficient magnesium, even if you're taking vitamin D supplements, your body may not be able to activate them properly. Magnesium also directly regulates the transport of calcium into bone cells. Studies estimate that up to 50% of older Americans are not getting enough magnesium from their diet, which means many people are unknowingly undermining their vitamin D and calcium efforts at the same time. The science. Research published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that magnesium intake was positively associated with bone mineral density in both men and women. Another study found that adequate magnesium was necessary for calcium and vitamin D supplementation to produce meaningful results. The analogy I use with my patients is this: vitamin D is the key that opens the door for calcium, but magnesium is what powers the key. A story from my practice. I had a patient named Dorothy, 74 years old, who was diligent about her calcium and vitamin D supplements, but was still showing low vitamin D levels in her blood tests. When I looked at her diet, her magnesium intake was very low. We added a small handful of pumpkin seeds daily and more almonds as a snack. Within 3 months, her vitamin D levels had risen without changing her vitamin D dose. That's the magnesium effect. How to use it. 1 ounce of pumpkin seeds, about a small handful, provides roughly 37% of the recommended daily magnesium intake for older adults. Almonds, dark leafy greens like Swiss chard and kale, avocado, and black beans are also excellent sources. The easiest daily habit is to sprinkle a tablespoon or 2 of pumpkin seeds on your morning oatmeal or yogurt. You can also snack on a small handful of almonds in the afternoon. Caution: magnesium from food is very safe and well tolerated by most people. High-dose magnesium supplements, however, can cause loose stools and GI discomfort, so if you're considering a supplement, start low and discuss the dose with your doctor. Food sources are gentler on the digestive system and preferable when possible. Food number 4, fermented foods, yogurt, kefir, and kimchi. Here's one that surprises many of my patients, and it involves your gut. Why it helps. Fermented foods are rich in live probiotic bacteria, particularly strains of Lactobacillus and Bifidobacterium. These beneficial bacteria do something very interesting in your gut. They produce short-chain fatty acids that gently lower the pH of your intestinal environment, making it slightly more acidic. A more acidic environment is one in which calcium compounds dissolve more readily and become available for absorption. On top of that, a healthy gut microbiome reduces chronic, low-grade inflammation, which is one of the factors that impairs nutrient absorption in older adults. The science. Several studies have found that probiotic supplementation improves calcium absorption, particularly in postmenopausal women and older adults. A study published in the Journal of Bone and Mineral Research found that certain probiotic strains measurably slowed bone density loss in older women over a 12-month period. What's particularly appealing about fermented foods is that they often contain calcium and probiotics simultaneously, making plain yogurt and kefir genuinely double-benefit foods. A story from my practice. I worked with a patient named Evelyn, a 67-year-old retired nurse who was skeptical about anything involving the gut microbiome. She called it all that bacteria talk. But when her bone density showed concerning decline, she agreed to try plain Greek yogurt every day alongside her existing plan. A year later, her physician noted her rate of bone density decline had slowed. She called me and said, "I guess the bacteria talk is real." How to use it. Plain, unsweetened Greek yogurt is one of the best options because it provides both calcium and live probiotic cultures. Avoid flavored yogurts with added sugar. They can negate some of the gut health benefits. Kefir is even more probiotic dense than yogurt and can be consumed as a drink. If you've never tried kefir, start with a small amount, about 4 ounces, and work up from there. For those who enjoy more adventurous flavors, kimchi and naturally fermented pickles also provide probiotic benefits, though without the calcium content. Caution: if you are taking immunosuppressant medications for conditions like rheumatoid arthritis, organ transplant, or similar, discuss adding fermented foods regularly with your doctor first, as the live bacteria in large quantities may not be appropriate for all immunocompromised individuals. For most healthy older adults, however, fermented foods are among the safest and most beneficial additions you can make to your diet. Food number 5, vitamin C, rich foods, bell peppers, citrus, and strawberries. This one often surprises people. Most of us associate vitamin C with immune health, but it plays a very meaningful role in how your body uses calcium. Why it helps. Vitamin C enhances the absorption of calcium in 2 important ways. First, it improves the chemical solubility of certain calcium compounds, making them easier for your intestinal cells to take in. Second, and perhaps more importantly, vitamin C is absolutely essential for the production of collagen. Now, most people think of collagen as a skin thing, but collagen is also the structural protein matrix inside your bones, the scaffolding that holds calcium in place. Without adequate collagen, calcium has nowhere solid to anchor. Your bone becomes more brittle even if calcium levels are adequate. Vitamin C is what builds and maintains that scaffolding. The science. A study following more than 11,000 older adults found that those with higher vitamin C intake had significantly greater bone mineral density. Research also shows that vitamin C deficiency, which is more common in older adults than many physicians expect, is associated with increased fracture risk. And here's a practical insight. Eating a vitamin C-rich food at the same meal as a calcium-rich food appears to produce better absorption than consuming them separately. A story from my practice. I had a patient named Barbara, 70 years old, who was eating plenty of dairy, cheese, yogurt, milk, but wasn't consuming much fruit or vegetables with vitamin C. When we discussed adding sliced strawberries to her morning yogurt and half a bell pepper with her lunch, she found it easy and enjoyable. She told me, "Dr. Kim, I thought I was eating healthy, I just wasn't eating smart." That phrase has stayed with me. How to use it. Bell peppers, especially red and yellow bell peppers, are actually higher in vitamin C than oranges, which surprises most people. Half a cup of sliced red bell pepper has about 95 milligrams of vitamin C, more than 100% of the daily recommended intake. Strawberries, kiwi, citrus fruits, and broccoli are also excellent sources. The simplest habit? Pair your calcium-rich food with a vitamin C-rich food at the same meal. Yogurt and strawberries, cheese and tomatoes, sardines with a squeeze of lemon and a side of steamed broccoli. Caution. Getting vitamin C from food is extremely safe. Your body simply excretes what it doesn't use. Very high doses of vitamin C from supplements, above 2,000 milligrams per day, may increase the risk of kidney stones in individuals who are susceptible. But from whole foods, this is not a concern for most people. Food number 6, onions and the allium family. And now for the one that always gets the most surprised reactions from my patients. Number 6 is onions. Why it helps. Onions contain a specific bioactive peptide, a small protein fragment that has been shown to inhibit the activity of osteoclasts. Osteoclasts are the cells responsible for bone resorption, essentially breaking down bone tissue. In healthy bone metabolism, osteoclasts and osteoblasts, the cells that build bone, work in balance. As we age, that balance tips. Resorption begins to outpace rebuilding. Onions may help slow that process. Additionally, onions are a rich source of prebiotic fiber, specifically fructooligosaccharides, which feed beneficial gut bacteria, thereby supporting the healthier gut environment that improves calcium absorption, similar to what we discussed with fermented foods. The science. One particularly compelling study from Switzerland examined a group of women around age 50 and found that those who consumed onions daily had approximately 5% greater overall bone density compared to women who ate onions rarely or never. 5% may not sound dramatic, but in terms of fracture risk, it is clinically meaningful. Onions also contain quercetin, a flavonoid antioxidant that has anti-inflammatory effects, and chronic inflammation, as I mentioned earlier, is a real enemy of bone health as we age. A story from my practice. I remember being skeptical myself the first time I read that onion study, but I shared it with one of my patients, a 72-year-old retired engineer named Frank, who was looking for simple, inexpensive things he could add to his diet. Frank started adding raw onion to his salads and cooking with onions every evening. He became almost evangelical about it. He'd come in for his appointments and say, "Doc, the onion is working." I can't attribute everything to the onion, but Frank's bone health markers improved over that period, and he was one of the most motivated patients I've had. How to use it. Raw or lightly cooked onions preserve more of the active compounds than fully caramelized or heavily processed onions. Add sliced raw onion to salads and sandwiches. Sauté onions lightly at the beginning of dinner preparation, in soups, stir-fries, or grain dishes. Yellow and white onions appear to have the highest concentration of the beneficial compounds, though red onions are also a good choice. Shallots and leeks, also in the allium family, provide similar benefits. Caution. Onions are well tolerated by most people, but some individuals experience bloating or digestive sensitivity, particularly in larger raw quantities. If that's you, start with smaller amounts or stick to lightly cooked onions. If you are taking blood thinners, note that quercetin, found in high amounts in onions, can have a mild interaction. This is unlikely to be significant with normal food consumption, but it's worth mentioning to your doctor if you're eating onions in large quantities daily. Now that you know the 6 foods that support calcium absorption, I want to spend a few minutes on what can undo all of your good work. Because if you're doing everything right on the intake side, but making one of these common mistakes on the other side, you may be neutralizing your efforts without knowing it. Number 1. Excess sodium. A high sodium diet causes your kidneys to excrete more calcium in your urine. This is called calciuria, and it's one of the most underappreciated contributors to bone loss in older Americans. Highly processed foods, canned soups, deli meats, and fast food are the biggest sodium sources in the American diet. You don't need to eliminate sodium, but if your diet is high in sodium and you're worried about your bones, that's a meaningful place to start. Number 2. Too much caffeine. 1 or 2 cups of coffee per day appears to have minimal effect on bone health, but consistently consuming more than 2 to 3 cups daily has been associated with increased calcium excretion and slightly lower bone density over time. This doesn't mean you have to give up your morning coffee, but if you're drinking 5 or 6 cups a day, it's worth considering. Number 3. Oxalates in certain foods. Spinach, beet greens, and Swiss chard are often promoted as calcium-containing foods, and while they do contain calcium on paper, they are also very high in oxalic acid, which binds to calcium in the gut and prevents it from being absorbed. In practical terms, the calcium in spinach is largely unavailable to your body. Cooked kale, broccoli, bok choy, and cabbage are far better vegetable sources of absorbable calcium. I'm not telling you to avoid spinach. It has other nutritional benefits, but don't count it toward your calcium intake. Number 4. Calcium and iron supplements taken together. Calcium and iron compete for the same absorption pathway in your intestinal cells. If you take both at the same time, they work against each other. If you're taking an iron supplement, which some older adults do for anemia, separate it from your calcium by at least 2 hours. And 5th, the timing of your calcium supplements. This is one of the most common errors I see. Calcium carbonate, the most common and least expensive form, requires stomach acid to dissolve, which means it should always be taken with food. Taking it on an empty stomach dramatically reduces how much you actually absorb. Calcium citrate is more forgiving and can be taken with or without food, which is why many physicians prefer it for older adults who may have lower stomach acid. Knowing what to avoid is just as powerful as knowing what to eat. These are simple adjustments, but they can make a meaningful difference. I want to leave you with something practical, not a complicated plan, just a simple rhythm you can start building this week. In the morning, begin your day with 2 whole eggs, scrambled, poached, or however you like them. Add half a bell pepper on the side or squeeze a little fresh citrus. You've already hit vitamin D, vitamin K2, and vitamin C before 9 a.m. If you have Greek yogurt for breakfast or as a snack, sprinkle a tablespoon of pumpkin seeds on top. That adds magnesium and probiotics in a single move. At midday, salmon, sardines, or mackerel 2 to 3 times a week as part of your lunch or afternoon meal. If sardines feel like a stretch, start with canned salmon. It's mild and versatile. Pair it with something containing vitamin C. A simple salad with tomatoes and lemon dressing works beautifully. In the evening, make onion a standard part of how you cook dinner. Sauté it lightly at the start of almost any dish: soups, grain bowls, stir-fries, eggs again. It takes almost no extra effort and adds real benefit over time. What to keep in mind: reduce your processed food intake to lower sodium. Separate your iron supplement from your calcium if you take both. Take calcium carbonate with meals, never on an empty stomach. And here's the most important thing I want you to hear. You don't need to do all 6 of these every single day to benefit. Start with 2 or 3 that feel most accessible. Build the habit, then add more. Small, consistent changes are what produce lasting results in your health. So let's bring this together. After 60, your body doesn't absorb calcium the way it once did. That's not a failure, it's a natural change. But it is something you can work with by including the right foods that support the environment your body needs for calcium to actually do its job. Fatty fish for vitamin D, eggs for vitamin D and K2, magnesium-rich foods to activate your vitamin D, fermented foods to improve your gut's absorption environment, vitamin C, rich foods to build the collagen scaffolding inside your bones, and onions to slow bone resorption and feed your gut microbiome. These are real foods available at any grocery store that work with your body in meaningful, evidence-based ways. Please remember, these foods are powerful complements to a bone health plan, not a replacement for medical care. If you have concerns about your bone density, or if you've been diagnosed with osteoporosis or osteopenia, please continue working with your doctor on your full treatment approach. That partnership is the foundation. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these 6 foods are already in your kitchen, and which one surprised you the most? Leave me a comment below. I read every single one, and your responses often inspire future videos. If this information was helpful, please consider sharing it with someone you care about, a friend, a family member, a neighbor who might benefit. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. I put out a new video every week on nutrition, healthy aging, and evidence-based wellness for adults over 60. Because you deserve information that's clear, honest, and actually useful. Next week, I'll be sharing the 5 exercises that strengthen your bones without putting stress on your joints. A perfect companion to everything we talked about today. I'm Dr. Leonid Kim. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next week.